Hello, everyone. It's Lindsay Landry, and welcome to today's Rise Together Sacred Conversation. I am super delighted and honored to be here with you today, and I have a special guest with me, Anna Frolik. And today we're going to be talking all about surrender magic and surrender medicine. And I feel like this is such a potent time to be having this conversation. So if you're here with us, thank you. Thank you for being here and being willing to be here for this conversation. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about Anna, and then I will let her dive in and share a little bit more about herself and her journey. So Anna Frolik is an intuitive soul guide, mentor, author, creative director, and founder of Wonderland Publishing. Her passion is to help spiritual leaders and entrepreneurs reclaim their magic, step into their true next level calling, and build a thriving business they love while living a life they love. Her current specialty is all things oracle cards. After self-publishing several of her own decks in the past 7 years, she began to receive many questions and curiosity from others who were wanting to birth their own decks. And this inspired her to create a do-it-yourself course. And then last year, she began to support spiritual business owners in completely done-for-you services to help them dream of their own oracle deck and make it happen. So I'm super delighted to be here with Anna, and her creativity has truly inspired me, and also her willingness to surrender and to realign to what her soul is calling her to do. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Lindsay. I'm so excited to be here and super excited about this topic today as well, because it's definitely been a big theme for me on my journey for quite a while already, but especially this past year. And I also think it's so relevant to what's happening in the world right now. So I'm super excited to be here and dive into this some more with you.
Yes. Yeah. And, before we really begin to dive in, I just want to say, for those of you who are listening, whether you are needing to surrender with what is happening in the world with all this virus stuff, and finding your surrender with kids at home, or maybe working from home, or maybe you've been let go from your job, maybe you're trying to find your surrender with that, or you might be in a place in your business where you're being called to your next level, or you're being called to allow a new part of you to emerge and to meet the world. No matter where you're being called to surrender, I truly believe this conversation is for you. And whenever me and Anna were talking before we got started, I was telling her, I truly believe how we do one thing, we do all things. And so if you're working on surrendering with the virus, or you're working on surrendering in your business, I think it's all medicine and it's all for us. And there's no like better or, they're both divinely perfect.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And it's definitely something that I've seen on my own journey in the past year. I truly believe that there's always a higher purpose to everything, and we're creating this experience collectively for a reason. And we might see the shadow reasons of it, but at the same time, there's always a challenge that is like a gateway to next level. And I feel right now there's so much coming up in the collective that is rising to the surface to be healed and integrated. And I truly believe that there is so much potential in this too. And definitely depending on how we all work together as a collective to master this challenge. But I also believe that we never really get a challenge that we're not prepared for. And there's always we all have the power within ourselves. And when we come together as a collective, I think there's so much potential for transformation that can have a great impact, not just in the short term, but also in terms of where we're heading in the long run. And the sense that I'm getting right now is that we're kind of being put back on track after maybe losing sight of what's important, not just to all of us individually, but to, like, in regards to where we're all heading together. And I think we're all getting an opportunity to introspect through, I mean, it's so obvious right now. We're all kind of being asked to stay at home and be on our own more, and maybe with family too, and close loved ones. But I think a lot of us are really getting this opportunity to reflect on what's really important, and maybe also what's not really important, maybe things that we thought were important and worth striving for or sacrificing our own well-being for. And in the end, it's often the simple things that matter the most when that's, I think, something we can really see in the situation.
Yes.
Things like connection and really, for me, I think also really, being in tune with nature and going back to a more natural way of living, and trusting that we're all supported no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. And, something that I've really been noticing too, is it's really important right now. I think it's always important, but right now, as we're having like this collective, pandemic, like it feels like it's more important than ever for us to be willing to be in our individual process, and to also surrender not only to the collective, but also to our individual process. And I think like when we are willing, it actually, by surrendering to our own process and being willing to surrender to what's being asked of us, it actually creates opening for other people as well. Do you notice that?
Absolutely. And I truly believe that everything is always connected. And that's, I think, the whole point of this entire situation. We're really seeing how we're all connected, and how definitely everything begins within ourselves individually, and how this also impacts everyone else. And for myself personally, this has been quite the journey already for the past year or so. And I mean, there's been a lot of transformation in my personal life recently too. I just ended a relationship, and like my entire life is changing completely. And it's taken like a whole lot of surrender.
Yeah.
And I feel I can totally see the reflection in what's happening globally. I think we're all processing a lot of us, I think, are processing grief, because there's the direct connection to, what's happening in our bodies when we do get the virus. And it's all, the lungs, and it's all connected to grief. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. And, one of the things I've really been feeling strongly too is, many of us have had a challenging 2019. And, like, as we allow ourselves to arrive here, we can maybe begin to understand a little bit more, like why we did go through what we went through then. But I know that whenever when we're in the big transformation, it can feel really scary and uncertain and unknown. So yeah, I'd love for you to maybe, can we just maybe start with even a little bit about like, what is surrender even?
That is a really great question, a really profound question. I don't even know where to start.
Mhm.
But I would say for me, well, this has definitely been a long, long journey. For me, it's been a lot about coming back to my feminine side more. Let's say for the past 10 years almost, this has really been the journey for me. And I think for a lot of us, women in the collective, but also men, I mean, we all have a masculine and feminine side. Our social conditioning, I think, often kind of tells us to, be the leaders. And that's all great, but just, kind of push and strive and struggle even and sacrifice and be in this very forward moving masculine energy that is depleting if we don't have the balance. And for us women especially, I think this makes it very difficult to enjoy the fullness of life and really embrace life as the gift that it is. And also, I think in our connections with each other, we need to have this balance. So, okay, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I feel it's really been that's been the theme for me for the past many years, really coming back more into my feminine side and, relaxing more into my essence, and also cultivating trust, not just within myself, but, the relationship with the greater whole, the what some people call God or the universe, or seeing how we all have this power within ourselves, but we're still in relationship with each other and with all that is. And so I think trust has been a really big topic for me in connection with surrender, knowing that, yeah, we can assert our own egos and make decisions about our lives and, kind of come from a place of, okay, this is what I want and I'm going to go and create this. But there's a difference between what we're, let's say, if we look for something outside of ourselves for maybe a solution to our problems or for fulfillment, something that we find is missing within ourselves, then we can achieve something, but at the same time, it won't be fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, it's been a lot about coming back to the inner values and what really wants to come through from within myself, and finding that deeper sense of connection and fulfillment in all areas of my life, where I'm not really asserting my ego. The desire to create comes from a deeper place and from something greater than just myself. And I think that's also, for me, that's really part of that journey of surrender.
Yeah. And so you said last year was a really big year for you. And so, like, what did it start with? How did you know that you were being asked to surrender? Like, what wasn't working or stopped working, or how did you know?
So this has definitely been quite a long journey for me already. And I would say it probably started about 7 or 8 years ago when I completely changed my life, and it was all meant to be. And, I basically gave up everything I owned. I was living back in Europe at the time, and then I wanted to travel and go on an adventure, and I didn't even know where I was going. I was just really embarking on a journey into the unknown. And then I came back to Canada, which is where I lived as a child for a while, and I did want to come back, but I didn't know that I was going to stay. That just kind of fell into place. And that was a huge process of healing for me. A lot of childhood trauma that came to the surface at that time. And I got re-traumatized in a lot of ways too, because I was completely on my own. I didn't know how to deal with what was coming up. And so one thing that happened was I began to lose trust in myself, and I started disconnecting from my own inner guidance and my own inner authority. And I see how it was all meant to be. It was like a complete reset of my system. But it took me quite a few years to break free from that. And
Can you
so,
share an example of like what that looked like?
um,
Was it
okay.
like looking for direction from other people, or?
Yeah, it was mostly in connection with my relationships initially. I was basically looking for my soulmate, and I kept meeting those people who, would reflect back to me on a really high level, actually, my own inner wounding and the fears of abandonment and rejection. And so it was very, very painful.
Mm.
And I healed a lot and I learned a lot through this journey as well. But it was really something that continued to be part of my healing journey for many, many years. And so what happened eventually was it started spilling over into my business, and I started making, the wrong decisions in my business and not listening to myself anymore, and giving my power away to coaches. And, I think a lot of us have been there.
Totally.
And so back in 2017, I had reached a level of success in my business that I had been working towards, but then all of a sudden it just felt completely empty and, total empty success. And I knew that something needed to change. I didn't know yet what exactly it was, but I just completely lost my passion for my work. And that continued through 2018. I would say I was internally shifting into freedom, but things were just completely falling apart in my business. Like I just had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do, but it was all coming from my head, not really from within. And I was so disconnected. I had to really fully reach that point of surrender where I knew, okay, this is not working anymore. I really need to be open to all the possibilities, even if I don't know what it's going to look like. And so the first step was to simply just let go of everything that wasn't working. And the transformation then started happening very quickly. So I started receiving the signs and the guidance from the outside, basically, of course, from within myself. I created this somehow, but the opportunities started showing up, and I felt that resonance within myself. Initially, it was just a very, a small project that came my way. Somebody reached out to me for something that I hadn't even advertised, but it was within myself. Like I had this thought many times, maybe I just want to do something more creative. And that's what I did in the past. And it is important to me to have that creativity in my work. And then I just felt so much joy when that project came my way, and I knew I was on the right track. And then this kept happening. People just started reaching out to me for services that I hadn't advertised at all. And so through that, I started getting these nudges, and I started following that. And then eventually everything fell into place. And maybe I can share a little bit later in this conversation about like what exactly happened after that. But that was kind of the beginning of this journey.
Yes. And I can feel your joy, just talking about it. Yeah. And, I've gone through a huge transition in my business too. I would say probably around that similar time, 2018, 2019. And I know like being in it, even when you're hearing the guidance, um, it can feel really scary and really confusing. And so, did you have any tools or support as you were navigating that?
I did get the support I needed. One of the things that happened was like I was so ready for transformation in like whatever way it wanted to come to me. I actually got some support here locally. So I just thought like December 31st, 2018, I knew, okay, I need support. Like I'm so burnt out. I don't know what to do anymore. Like I was totally open to even finding a job for a while just to, you know, to just be able to let go of everything. And so I didn't need to have that pressure anymore to make it work, you know, just for the money. And so I went to Work BC. That's like a local organization. They support, well, unemployed people and also people who are kind of transitioning and, you know, not making a full-time income, which I wasn't at the time. So, and I just knew it was the right step to take. And I didn't get any financial support or anything, but they just sent me to the exact right workshops and with the right people. And it was really magical the way it happened, you know. I went there and then they sent me to this, was it like a career planning workshop? That was kind of the first thing to really get in touch with your gifts and your passions. And of course the guy who facilitated it was also a spiritual teacher. So the first part of the workshop was just all the things that I needed to hear about, also, you know, surrendering and getting out of my head and back into my body and being open to the possibilities rather than trying to figure things out. And like so many things, it was just, I mean, totally not what I expected, but it was exactly what I needed at the time. And I didn't actually need to find a job. Like the guidance that I got whenever I wanted to apply for one, the guidance I got was, you don't need to. And I didn't. So, but still, it was good to have that support and to know that, you know, if the worst happened, that I would just have the tools and the resources that I needed to, you know, that I was going to be okay. So that was very comforting at the time. And yeah, so that was definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. And so this is coming forward, and this might seem a little silly, but it was like a real thing for me during my process. So when we're so used to like being in structure and working and filling our time with like, even, you know, this past year, like I've gone through a huge energetic rewiring of how I hold energy and the way that I even hold clients, you know? And so before I was doing so much managing and tending my business and like my creations and all this stuff, right? So it was taking a lot of time and a lot of energy. And so what I noticed when I began to let go of this, like I had so much time. And like I had no idea what to do with my time. And so like I would almost feel myself like feeling a little bit stressed out, you know, and guilty, and like all this stuff would start to come up because I didn't know what to do with like, should I feel guilty that I don't have clients and my boyfriend's working, you know? And did you notice anything like that for you?
Not necessarily in that same way, because I'm someone who I always know how to keep myself busy. And it wasn't that, you know, I was just sitting here and doing nothing in a lot of ways. But I do know what you're talking about, though. I mean, I've had those situations. I think more now, because I've been very busy in the past year. I've done a lot of creative work for my clients. And sometimes in between, there might be a bit of a gap, you know, where I don't have as much work. And when I've just completed, you know, a couple large projects and I'm kind of feeling my way forward to the next thing. And actually just recently that happened, when I just knew I had to kind of take care of the things that were happening in my personal life more. And so I needed to create space on that level. And I had just finished up a couple big client projects and one of my own too, my new cards. And then all of a sudden there was like this empty space. And I was like, what am I going to do now? But it was so beautiful because it was really that space that I needed to come back to myself and reconnect with feeling, because when I was keeping myself so busy,
Yeah.
I was also disconnecting from what I was feeling or my own inner process in a way. Like I was almost doing this to distract myself a little bit as well from what I was processing on a personal level. So then creating that space was really beautiful and needed. And I totally agree. Sometimes it can feel really weird and you don't know what to do because we're also conditioned to always have to be busy and always have to be doing something. And I'm not really feeling the guilt as much anymore, but it's more like that restlessness, what am I going to do to keep myself busy? And now I think I'm getting to the point where I can be more okay with just being, but now I'm pretty busy again, like I have been for the last 3 or 4 weeks, just with a lot of calls and but finding that balance. So
Yeah. And I know that you're in nature as well.
Yeah,
You have a pretty lush spot where you can plug in.
Nature is always so beautiful. Like I need to be out in nature, and that's actually a bit of a challenge for me right now because well, I mentioned I'm just coming out of a relationship and my ex-partner has our dogs, so so now I don't have a dog anymore that I can take for walks, which is kind of sad, but I think I'm still going to go out in nature, maybe just some of the trails I might not.
I'm sure you're finding a surrender with that.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's okay, but I think later in the season, there are a lot of bears in the woods, so I'm going to have to find a way, but it's all going to be good. Ultimately, I've done that in the past too. It's all about trusting nature, and I've done that. I've gone out and into the woods on my own without a dog, and just trusting that nature was going to take care of me. So that's really beautiful too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was fishing yesterday and I had a snake swim up to me and I could feel my initial response. I was like, I really should move and I should like get away. And I really used it as an opportunity. Like, can I just surrender to this? And like, it's small and I really don't think it's going to hurt me. And is there any evidence that it's going to like be aggressive or anything, And, yeah, so it was really interesting because I was like practicing expanding my capacity to like be with the discomfort and still be curious about, what would happen if I just stayed with it rather than moved away from it.
That is so beautiful. And one thing I definitely see when I'm out in nature with all the animals, I always feel this really beautiful connection. And a lot of people always ask me, are you not scared of the bears? And I'm actually more scared of the coyotes because we once had a kind of a scary encounter with one. But ultimately, I'm always so happy when I see an animal. It's like I can feel the connection. It's like this heart connection, and it's almost like we're communicating, and it's so sacred, such a sacred experience for me when I'm out in nature. I can really feel the connection to everything around me, and it's just pure magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I checked in on Facebook yesterday because I wanted to see where people are in regards to surrender and if they have questions. And I was having a conversation with a client yesterday, and I know one of the things that was coming forward for her is like this question of like, it was almost like a anxiety of like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be with this. I don't know how to, like, what am I supposed to be doing? And so I don't know if you have anything, if you felt that in your personal journey, or if you have anything you want to speak to in regards to that.
Definitely. I think we've all been there. And maybe a couple things I could share from my personal journey. Sometimes it can be very uncomfortable to deal with the emotions that come up, because I think a lot of us have been taught to suppress what we're feeling, especially the uncomfortable feelings, and to see all of that as negative. And it's been that way for me too. I remember when I was a child, I was always very sensitive, and I would cry a lot, and sometimes the people around me didn't know what to do with me. And I would almost get punished for being so sensitive. And so I learned that it was a negative thing. And I think later in my life, then I would start doing that to myself. Whenever I would get so emotional, then I would somehow punish myself or try to suppress the feelings or run from them. And I think one thing that changed for me, or has changed for me in the past year or two, has been really allowing myself to feel it all. And it's really a process of releasing resistance. It's, in a way, something very natural, but at the same time, it can be scary because we're kind of wired differently just through our conditioning. And it seems counterintuitive, but I think the more we resist what we're feeling, the more pain we're creating. The pain actually comes from resisting. And when we allow ourselves to let go and relax into that space of surrender, then we can be in a space where the emotions can flow, and it's more like this feeling of cleansing, and it's actually really beautiful. And the way I see it is really energy. It's processing energy and being with it, and sometimes just giving ourselves permission to sit with what's happening right now in this moment without needing to change it, without needing to judge it or run from it or punish ourselves for whatever we may be going through that we may think is going wrong. There is nothing wrong. It's just energy that's moving and transforming. So that's one part of it. And I think the other really big piece for me has been kind of reclaiming my connection with spirit and realizing, well, that's really almost like a spiritual awakening, realizing that I'm more than just this little human that's kind of trapped here in this body, and I'm not powerless. Maybe from this perspective, it may feel that way, but when we realize that we're not alone, and that there is a higher purpose, and that there is something greater than just our own little selves, then for me, that was a really important key, I think, last year to making this shift happen. I was reading Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth. It's a really beautiful book. And there were a few things that I was just reading the exact things that I needed to hear at the time, but something shifted when I realized that, you know what, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm not going to die, I'm always going to be, I can't, because we're all eternal beings, we can't, it's just the ego that's afraid of death, but in the end, it's just transformation, and we are eternal beings, so there's nothing that can happen. We're always supported, and I think as long as we hold on to the false securities, that's when we have this experience of, well, maybe not feeling supported or feeling like everything around us is a threat. But then something can really shift there when we see that there's something beyond just what we can control, and really finding that trust. it's kind of hard to put into words. It was such a profound experience. But I think when I realized that, when I, not just intellectually, but really within myself, like my entire experience, then something shifted. And that's shortly after that, I had that big breakthrough where I just knew, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to just totally restart everything in my business and head in a more creative direction. And then everything just opened up like this, like so quickly. Mm.
And I feel like I'm kind of at a place like that right now where, you know, in August, James got let go from his job, then our dog died, and then, you know, we moved, and then 2 months later we got kicked out of the house we were living in, and we moved again, and then our cat died, and then our grandparents died, and we're living on the lake now at my grandmother's camp, and I'm kind of like, what the hell are we doing here? You know, like we're in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden, you know, it's like, it's starting to, like, everything's clicking into place, and like I'm able to see the web, you know, the safety web. And one of the things that you said was nothing's wrong, right? And like, and that was something for myself. I really had to like come to terms with that, because I think we're so programmed to like, we're taught, and then, you know, we're taught the ways we should be doing things. And then like when we learn mindset work and even manifesting and all that, right? Like we're like, oh, I'm creating this. And for me, I like came to terms with like, yes, I am the creator. And sometimes in life, experiences happen where they're actually creating you. And so it's like such a bigger consciousness that is creating in those moments. So rather than me feeling like, well, I created getting kicked out of this house, you know, because my mind was like, how the hell? Like, you know, I wasn't thinking that. I wasn't aligned to that. I felt safe. I felt supported, you know, all these things, right? And I really had to come to this place of, you know, some things happen beyond what our mind can comprehend. And we still have to be able to surrender to it and allow it and sort of like rest in the bigger creation. And for me, you know, when I can find the safety webs when I can begin to see the webs that I've created for myself, then I can remember like, oh yeah, I'm so supported and loved. You know, because there's this part of me, even if it's seeing a Facebook memory. And even today, you know, my Facebook memory was like a butterfly wing, and the wings were broken. And I had wrote the song lyrics like with a broken wing, which is kind of perfect for right now. And it's, you know, even just seeing those little messages from myself, right? And it's like at the exact moment that it needs to show up, and then I can like expand into the bigger creation of the web, the web that's been woven.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so true. Often there's so much more that happens. I think everything happens for us. I truly believe that when we can see it, when we can really see that, I think that makes the journey a lot easier. But sometimes it can be really painful. And, you know, those experiences that you just shared, I've been there. I've gone through times where like everything seemed to be going wrong in my life, and we kept losing homes, and we lost our cat, and, you know, so many losses. And I mean, this was an empowerment journey in some ways, but when I look back now, I see that everything was really a journey that started a long time ago when I set certain intentions for my life, where I kind of really saw my potential and where I wanted to, or where I saw myself heading in my life, you know, the big picture. And I wasn't aware of how much transformation that would take, you know, for me to get to this place. And it's not even so much about the goal, because there's never really an end to this journey, but I'm just seeing, like, I called in so many things, so many big things, maybe back in 2010, 2011, when I got started on this big journey of transformation. And I see now how all of this required such a deep healing process. I wouldn't have been able to do it back then. And now everything is starting to make sense. I'm starting to see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And I'm still alive. I'm still
Yeah.
okay. And I'm happier than I've been in a very long time. And maybe I've never felt this much inner peace in my life before, in a lot of ways, while still also, being alive and
Totally.
being human and going through the motions. But it's not so scary anymore. It's more that sense of adventure and being held by something bigger than myself, which is so beautiful.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so one other question that had come forward from the audience was, like, how do you know when it's time to act? Because often surrendering, like, we kind of like lean back, we listen, and then it's like, how do you know when it's time to move, when it's time to act?
Okay, there may be a couple ways I could approach this. Maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have answered this very differently.
Totally.
Um, One thing that came into my reality last year was human design.
Hmm.
I actually started implementing my own human design or my own strategy correctly before I even knew about my human design. That's kind of what happened in 2019, beginning of 2019. I just very intuitively started implementing my strategy correctly, and that's how everything started falling into place. And so this is going to be different for every person when you look at it through the lens of human design. We are all wired differently, or you know we all have our own unique ways of creating. Now, I'm not an expert on human design, um, but I've been living in my experiment consciously for the past year or so, and for less than a year, I think. That's when I really started exploring it and looking into it in more detail. But one thing I've realized, there are, different types, and I think you're a generator too. Is that
Mm.
right? So for us generators, I think about 70% of the population are generators or manifesting generators. So for us, actually, it's a lot about allowing ourselves to step back and wait for the opportunities to come, and then responding to what we're receiving according to our own inner authority. So I think a lot of us have been taught to manifest more like manifestors, who are only about 8% of the population. Those are the people who can just get inspiration and then act on it. And I think in the coaching world, that's often what we're taught. You just gotta decide what you want. You gotta go and do it. For
Mm-hmm.
most people, it doesn't work that way. And
For me, it
so I think
does.
for me, it's really become much more of a dance with life.
Yeah.
And I think when we're really tuned into ourselves and connected to our own intuition and our own inner guidance, I think so much happens just on the plane of the physical body and through desire. I think when we're really connected to our desires and our truth deep within ourselves, then we have a very intuitive understanding of when it's time to act. And I think often when we feel the extreme urgency to take action, it's more of a sense of running from what is, or kind of forcing something to happen. Then we probably need to step back a bit and just reconnect, and then allow those opportunities to come, and really trusting this process of waiting. Um, but another thing I can say based on my own experiences, I think a lot of us also, in certain situations, we tend to wait too long. And I mean, that was me in the past. I would have all those ideas or desires, what I wanted to create in my journey. For example, when I was still in corporate, I had this huge desire to be my own boss. I wanted to start my own business, and I had been thinking about that, or really feeling that, for so many years, and I kept holding myself back because I didn't have, I was holding on to the security of having a full-time job, and I wanted to save up more money and all that just before I felt safe taking this step. And eventually I just had to take the leap. And so I think when you're really feeling it strongly in your body, and it keeps coming back and it keeps coming back, it's not just an idea up here, but you just keep feeling it, and everything outside, like inside of yourself, and also through interaction with the people in your life and what's happening in your situation. Every time you get to a certain point, you just feel, I can't do this anymore. Like, I really need to move forward. I think that's when you really need to listen and trust that you're going to be supported in this process of breaking free. So these are a couple things I could share from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's like this, I do feel like it's kind of changed over the years. So I used to kind of feel like a burning in my belly. And lately, the past year, what it really feels like is this energy that emerges more from like my root. And so it's like the pulse is like coming up and moving through me versus like something up here that I'm like being called to act on. And I mean, sometimes it is an idea, right? That like I take action on, but what I find is most potent is when it arises from the like coming through almost like a Kundalini surge, where when that happens, like I know it's gonna be golden.
Exactly.
But
interesting that you're mentioning Kundalini, because I've actually been feeling this a lot lately. I've gone through a Kundalini awakening before, but right now I'm often, like, I feel it physically. I just kind of feel the buzzing in my spine, and I feel, okay, something's happening here.
Totally. Yeah, I think we're all going through a huge reset, and it takes a willingness to surrender, and even for me, getting to the camp, we moved in January for the second time, and I could feel that same impulse of like wanting to just like, okay, well, I need to get my business back in order. I need to create some structure. I need to and when I would sit by the water, like all of a sudden my nervous system, I would just start feeling so tired. And I was like, actually, my nervous system needs healing right now, and so I would just surrender. And so like I would, because I could even feel that. I was like, oh my God, like I feel exhausted sitting by the water. But it was a good thing, right? Because it's like trying to help bring me back. And the more I surrendered, then it's like I then start to feel that surge, right? The inspiration moving through me in a new way, and wanting to use me kind of like a vessel. And I think that's where we're being led to, being cracked open so we can be used. Like we can let the inspiration move through us and create through us.
Yeah, I'm definitely experiencing this in a very similar way. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned feeling exhausted, because I think that's really, when we do feel exhausted, that's the first thing we need to take care of. It was that for me too. I think that's what started changing for me when I started getting the support that I needed. And so I could fully relax into the process, and I wasn't spending so much energy on worrying and trying to control things and trying to, kind of maintain the structures that, felt so solid, but that just weren't working, and I wasn't able to see beyond that. And reclaiming my energy, I think that was the first thing that I needed to do to it's so interesting because I think once I really surrendered to my new path, then the energy just came. Like it was, it was not even so much that I was giving from just myself, then it just starts flowing through me. And I can work a lot these days. I can be very active and get a lot done in a day. And I don't feel exhausted because I'm enjoying it. It just flows very naturally and very easily, not pushing anything. But then there are also times when I know, okay, my body is saying you need to rest. Now I just need some integration time. And that's also happened a lot lately. Just this past weekend, for example, my ex-partner moved out, and it was maybe not the kind of experience that a lot of people would expect in this kind of situation. We still get along, and we're still almost like best friends. We just knew that we needed to move on and start fresh individually for good reasons. But there's still a grieving process that happens, and that can be so exhausting. And on the weekend, it was very, a lot of work and everything very busy, and I didn't really have the space to process anything emotionally. And then this past Monday, I was just like feeling so exhausted and so emotional. And I was like, I got to move forward. I got to do this and that and everything in my business. But I noticed how I started disconnecting from, from myself and from the process that wanted to happen within my body and within myself. So eventually I just surrendered to it, and I said, okay, I'm just going to give myself some space to rest. And it's so important because I think especially when we're going through a big transition in a business also, the old conditioning, the old patterns, everything needs to fall away. And when we move forward too quickly, then the tendency will be, or that can also happen in relationship transitions too, the tendency will be to recreate the old when we move forward too quickly. So we kind of need to have that space to fully let go of the old and then allow the new to come in naturally. So I think that's something that we often tend to want to skip, but it's so important.
Yeah, I love that you named that because it really is so true. Like if we don't surrender, if we don't allow it to fall away, right? If we don't allow the transition to happen, then we're just going to create the same thing. And yeah. So good. So much goodness. So is there any last things that you want to leave our audience with today? Words of wisdom or
I was thinking I could maybe pull a card from one of my Oracle card decks.
Yeah.
And I saw the question in the questionnaire yesterday, like, okay, should I share like 3 tips or a meditation? And I couldn't think of anything. But then just before this conversation today, I thought, you know what? I could pull a card from my magical heart healing cards. These are all about this journey of surrender. I wrote these when I was going through this big healing journey back in 2012 through 2014. And it was the medicine that I needed at the time for myself initially. And then I started sharing them with the world. And they're still like so helpful right now. Like I've been working with them almost daily for so many years, but especially in the past year, I've been working with this medicine again. And it's always so helpful for me to, be reminded of that, how to do things differently, and, not always needing to figure things out or act on fear, and really coming back to this place of love and openness. And I'm just gonna pull a card for everybody who watches this video. And my intention is for this to be a message of support and healing and exactly what we all need to hear right now to master this transition and this challenge with love and courage,
Mm-hmm.
and not getting stuck in fear. Okay. Okay, it's very simple. Love. I'll just read it. The answer to your question is simple and beautiful. Love. See the love that surrounds you. Trust the love you feel in your heart. Love freely and without holding anything inside. Receive the love that is offered to you. Love is the most wonderful gift we can share with one another. It heals all wounds and brings great joy to the hearts of those it touches. Let love be your guide now and always. And there's a magic prayer or affirmation at the bottom. I choose love in all areas of my life. So I feel this is so relevant right now. I think on a higher level, this is the exact transformation that we're going through right now. We're clearing a lot of the collective fears and opening ourselves to being love and feeling the love, not just within ourselves, but the connection to all that is and to each other. So I think this is so very relevant right now. I love that this card came up.
Me too. It feels perfect. So thank you so much for being with us today, having this conversation. If anyone's wanting to connect with Anna and her work, I'm going to have the links in the comments below. Her website is her name, and then her other one is
Wonderlandpublishing.net.
Yeah, so you can check her out there, and the links are below as well to check out her YouTube channel and all that goodness. And if you're new to my work, you can connect with me on Soul Inspired Success, my Facebook page, and I'll drop that below as well. So I'm sending you all so much love, and let us know what this conversation is bringing forward for you. Let us know where you're being invited to surrender. And if you desire to be witnessed, let us know below. All right. I love you.